Inside Chats. It's great to have you here on this fine day. I hope that you're going to enjoy tonight the selection of drinks. That was Paul's choice, just to put him out. Yeah, it was a joke. No.
I think the best joke's when you have to explain it. That's very good.
I'm George talking, but yeah, it's amazing to have you here tonight. We have a special guest. We heard many good things about Paul, so I thought we must have him today. So it's going to be a pleasure to have a chat, and he chose a really interesting way of this to describe his works. So welcome to dark side of client researcher's life. So we're going to explore what's the dark side of it. Well, hopefully it's not too dark. But Paul, if you can share a brief about yourself, your career so far, and then the current role that you're doing.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for leaving the wine long enough to listen for a little bit. So my name is Paul Thomas. I am Global Insight Director at Suntory Global Spirits. It's the largest bourbon company in the world with brands like Jim Beam and Maker's Mark. It is one of the largest gin companies in the world with brands like Roku and Sipsmith. We also own a whole load of scotches like Lafroig and Bowmore. We're the third biggest spirit company in the world. My job is I look after all the research in EMEA, and I look after our global shopper expertise. I used to be Global Insight Director at Asahi Beer. I looked after it globally there. I was Head of Insight for Africa for Diageo, where I was very privileged to get to visit 15 different countries, a total of 25 times in 3 years. Got to try every street drug in Ethiopia, from getting my absolute arse handed to me by the pepper soup in Lagos in Nigeria. Prior to that, I used to be Head of Insight for Ferrero, the chocolate maker. So a mixture of chocolate and beer and spirits is where I've got this svelte figure from over the years. And I started my career, first 5 years, with Ipsos. So I started on the agency side. And that's me. Okay. Good sense of humour, 6'1", one wife, one dog, one cat.
Amazing. So from where does come the dark side? What was the inspiration of the dark side?
Well, firstly, because I thought it might interest people rather than just what is a day in the life of the client like. But I spend a lot of my time talking to agencies. I spend a lot of my time at conferences, engaging with other people. And there seems to still be this slightly cat and dog relationship between agencies and clients. There seems to be this weird slave-master relationship between agencies and clients, this strange agencies are from Venus, clients are from Mars perspective. And I've spent a lot of time, whether it's talking to agencies, whether it's appearing at conferences, trying to help agencies better understand how can they work better with clients versus just feeling constantly frustrated that the client is a soulless bastard who only wants things sooner for less money and doesn't have a heart beyond that, which I'm sure anyone agency side has felt sometimes on a Friday evening at 4 o'clock when you get an email going, no, I need it today. But yeah, so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a perspective from both sides of the fence. Throw in a few war stories, talk about what good looks like from an agency and what bad looks like, and hopefully within the next 45 minutes no one will leave or fall asleep. That is my expectation.
Okay, fair enough.
Brilliant. I think let's start unpicking that. So what do you think agencies feel sometimes scared of clients?
It's a weird word, isn't it? The client, right? All agencies say that, the client. They don't say Paul, or the guy in the waistcoat, or that guy's had probably one glass of wine too many before he starts this type of talk. It's always the client. And there's this weird belief that all clients are entirely analogous. We're all the same. We're just the client. We're this evil thing at the end of an email, or, well, once upon a time at the end of the phone line, but no one ever picks up the phone now. And that's just not the case. Clients are as diverse as agencies and people, and there are clients who are phenomenally empathetic and want to support and work hand in hand with their client. There are also clients who are a bit more hands off, and for me, it's really important to try and build that relationship to understand what the client is like and how they're going to work, rather than that sort of fearful, oh my God, I better not disturb the client. You know, we're not that important. When I go home, well, not tonight, but in the morning, I'll be going, even though I'm a very senior client, I'll be going around my garden picking up dog poo, and then I'll make my wife a cup of tea in bed, and then she'll shout at me because it's not good enough. So I'm as human as anyone else in the room, right? And then she'll shout at me again for something else. That's the way it tends to work.
But what do you think the fear factor, or where does it come from? Is it that level difference in, be it hierarchy? Is it age difference? Agencies being staffed with quite young people?
You know, I'm a young man, officially. Although increasingly, as you go through your market research questionnaires, I'm moving from one age band to the next. There seems to be an ingrained belief, so I started my career at Ipsos. You were taught that almost like the expression, what the customer says is right. Almost agency staff at the very, when they start their careers, taught that. If the client wants it on Thursday, you'll deliver on Thursday. If the client wants you to do 6 focus groups, you're going to do 6 focus groups. And that just breeds this weird relationship where there is this constant expectation that the client gets what they want, however unfair it is. And that makes it very easy in some ways, because I know if I make an unreasonable request, someone will try and do it. But the agencies that I really respect are the ones that will actually go, well, no, come on, let's push back here. Let's have a reasonable conversation as 2 equals, because we are equals, right? I can't do my job without the agency, and the agency can't do their, well, they wouldn't get the work without me. We are equals, but this ingrained belief that somehow the agency is less important than the client really creates that self-fulfilling prophecy of, you start to act like you're less important than the client, and therefore the client treats you like you're less important than the client, versus establishing a relationship of equals.
Of course.
Do you think that these days it's even harder to develop that human part of it, as most of our calls and meetings these days are Zoom calls, emails and stuff like that, and sometimes you don't have time, or you just can't feel that other side of the human that you need to know as well, right?
It's interesting you use the words, we don't have time, right? How many of us sit on Zoom calls from 9 till 5 every day, and probably if you look back at your day, half of them were a waste of time, or you could have just been at half of them. We do have time, we just don't use it very well. One of my favourite things that an agency can do up front is come to me and say, Paul, we'd like to learn how you want to work with us. Do you want daily phone calls, weekly phone calls? Do you want us to not really talk to you until the end of the project? Do you want to be involved in the research? Do you want to workshop it through with us? Because by asking, then you find out. Most agencies just don't ask, and then wonder why the client then gets frustrated about, why didn't you invite me to this, or why didn't you tell me about that? So that's a slightly circuitous answer that probably doesn't answer your original question around Zoom calls. I've got fantastic relationships with people I've never met, and that's not a weird online dating thing. Don't go down that path. We're not here to discuss that. But I've worked with the people I've met, and I've had great projects with that I've never met. You can still be human on a Zoom call. Take the time to ask how people are doing. It's very simple. I think it's harder. I think agencies should push more for face-to-face time. I had a face-to-face qualitative debrief a few weeks ago from an agency on Sipsmith about our creative and our advertising platform. And the creative agency were in the room, and we were in the room, and the researcher was in the room. It was bloody epic. Like, we talked, we made changes, we agreed things live. On Zoom, half the people would have turned the camera off. A couple of them would have been in the background making a cup of tea. Half of them probably weren't even wearing trousers. I was in that half. So I think there is a value in face-to-face relationship building which agencies don't ask for, but they should. Yeah. Like, we're spending money with agencies, like, invest that time with us, and it only builds that relationship longer term.
But does it take two to tango in a way? Do you also encourage those sort of meeting up occasions?
I do. I mean, I'm very lucky that I work in an industry where meeting up is part and parcel of what we do. If you can't organise a social in the alcohol industry, you're really missing the point and missing the opportunity. But yeah, it should be. It should really be a mutual undertaking that an insight project is for me not an exchange. It's not right, you're going to give me this, I'm going to give you that. It's a partnership. And yeah, investing the time with people is hugely important. Otherwise, how does the agency learn from you, and how do you learn from the agency?
Yeah, so agency needs to do the first step, right?
Probably, yeah.
In dating, the man should take the first step. Well, maybe that's not the best example.
Yeah, welcome to 2024.
Maybe that's not the best example, but
You've dug a hole there.
Yeah.
let's say
Right, you're cancelled, you're out of here. So I think probably, yeah, the agency, because one of the things that agencies don't always realise is that a client might have 40 to 50 research projects at any one time, whereas an agency person might have 4 to 5 or more. I'm not saying that they have fewer, but we have so many. So if you want, everyone is vying for our time, is fighting for our time. Just be the one that asks. And if you don't, someone else will, and we'll give them the time.
So is that your blueprint for success for a new agency? So let's say you started working with a new agency. What would the first 90 days optimally look like for you?
Well, I might go before the first 90 days. The first 90 days already implies we've dated, to continue this dangerous analogy that you're going down. But often one of the questions is asked is like, how as an agency do we approach clients? How do we get them to reply to our emails, our phone calls?
on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, all those sort of things. So I get at least 20 emails a week from complete strangers saying, our MD is in town, would you like to come and meet him? Or her. No, fuck off, of course I don't. Why would I? I don't know him, I have no idea what he or she's going to offer me. Or you get the, we'd love to tell you about our methodology. And I don't know about you, how many of you really want to go on a date with someone based on their methodology? You know, it's not the size of the methodology, it's what you do with it and all those sort of things. So you get all these emails, oh, we'd love to tell you about our concept screening, or we'd love to tell you about how we test advertising, or we've got the biggest database. Fuck off, don't care. Honestly, don't care. I get 20 of those a week, minimum. What really works is when an agency puts some effort in, frankly, and goes, right, Paul works for a spirit company here, it's a predominantly whiskey company. The least we could do is go to him with a point of view on his category based on what's special about the research that we do. Because then you've got the proof of the pudding, right? First, you know, consider it like a first date where you need to both pay half of the meal. We're going Dutch on this one. What the agency offers you is a little bit of I'm going to give you some new information. What you give them is a foot into the business and a potential to work with them. So before you get into that 90 days, like getting a client to agree to the first day is really hard, because there are, particularly in London, we are so spoilt for choice. Like methodologies tend to be interchangeable. You know, whether I use a Kantar or an Ipsos or an agency XYZ, they're all fucking interchangeable. It's the people that matter, and you build a relationship with people, and that takes effort early from the agency. And then, yeah, in those first 90 days, assuming you've won whatever the proposal is, working out quickly how you and the client want to work together, what the boundaries are. So if you only work Monday to Wednesday, tell your client you only work Monday to Wednesday. Because there's nothing more frustrating than sending an email on a Friday morning and out of office I don't work Monday to Wednesday, Thursday to Friday. Just set the boundaries, set the way you'll work together, and from there it should be really smooth sailing on a project.
And what are the usual pitfalls in that?
Well, people don't do that, would be number one. That would be the first one. A mistake that thinking that, okay, how do I explain it? As a client, my objective is to make my business make decisions. Right? That's what research is. It's a tool that helps me, my business make decisions. By and by, the methodology, the agency, it's a little bit interchangeable for me, providing you can help me make decisions in the best way. So agencies can get very, very lost in the minutiae of sample detail, or do we need n equals 225 or n equals 250? Should we do a 7-point Likert scale or a 10-point Likert scale? Don't fucking know. Don't care. Provided you with your expertise are helping me to get to the answer quickly. So there's so much focus on the process. I'd say agencies spend 80% of their focus on the process and 20% on, well, what is the client going to do with it? I'd love it if that flipped.
Right. But I guess you can understand the agencies also. They need to differentiate. They need to explain why and how they do it. So how can they tweak their approach? So focus on the outcomes?
Yeah. Focus on how you'll help me make decisions. Because that's what research is. As I say, it's a tool to make decisions. And it could be qualitative, it could be quantitative, it could be super complicated, or it can be, I've organised 3 focus groups myself in a pub and I've done it myself. That's all research. Your job is to help me realise why your particular way of doing research will get me that answer. It will either get me a better answer, or it will get me the same answer quicker or cheaper.
Makes sense. So I heard that you love events as well when agencies approach on the events. So what are your thoughts on those approaches?
Events and conferences. And I was saying this to Hannah at the back earlier, so I apologise for using the exact same awful jokes. I've never been a pretty girl at a party, right? I don't know what it feels like to have a group of sweaty, horrible men coming up to me trying to get my number, right? Well, I don't know, maybe that's going to change tonight. I'm worried about these two. To be honest. I've never been in that until I was a client at conferences where suddenly they're around me like bees around a honeypot in terms of they just see like the dollar signs flashing in their eyes. And it's a little bit disingenuous because I don't want to be part of a meat market. I'm also not going to put out to that many agencies. I've only got so much time. I am not an insight whore, despite the rumours. We better take that bit out. But yeah, I think it's about understanding that clients are people. We also have boundaries. If 30 agencies come up to me, and I'm naturally quite an introvert, it's my idea of fucking hell to have 30 strangers coming up to me and going, can I show you the size of my database? No, you can't. Get out of here. Yeah. Or can I tell you why my methodology is better than his? No, you may not. Get out of here immediately. See, it's just being tailored. It's about like learning about the client, what they do, what they're going to want from you. If you do that, you might only be able to approach 5 clients, not 100 via cold calls, but you're probably going to get 3 positive answers versus 0 that you'd get. Also, if you're going to send cold emails, at least change the name. The amount that I get, Dear Margaret, that's not for this forum. Just put the effort in. Reward. Like, a client doesn't have to talk to you to have a right to expect the client to talk to you. The way I always say it, so I work very long hours. Every extra email I send is one fewer conversation with my wife. It's one fewer lap around the local park with the dog. So I don't owe 30 agencies a response. I owe the ones that have put the effort in to go, well, actually, dog, and she is a lovely dog, you're going to have to wait 5 minutes whilst I respond to this. Because I want to finish as much for the day as much as everyone else does. I can know the pubs are open from 12. Come on.
So it's all about agencies should tailor their approach, of course, around your goals, who you are, get to know you, not in invasive way, not to try to sell themselves to you, not to treat you as a meat or a whore or something like that. So it's all about that. But can you maybe now, because I know that agencies also think they are super important part of your role as well, and I think that's also that's true or not for some. But can you explain how your usual, let's say, week looks like, or how much agencies impact your day to day?
That's a really good question. So, my team has about 40 research projects on at the moment. So at least 2 of my days is solidly talking with agencies about signing stuff off, agreeing this is the discussion guide, this is the right presentation, these are the recommendations. The rest of my job is taking that research which the agencies deliver and repackaging it and reselling it to my internal stakeholders. So as a client, you're more a salesperson than you are an insight person. My skill isn't methodology anymore. Maybe it was when I was agency side, but I can't tell you why it matters that we have a base size of n equals 150 rather than n equals 200. I'm not going to start talking about statistical testing and the bell curve. I'm going to start to talk to my stakeholders. I'm going to talk to the CEO who didn't believe in the idea and go, right, here's the data that you need to persuade you. I'm going to tell it in a story. I'm going to go to the sales director who loved the idea but thinks it's probably bigger than it will be, and manage his expectation by telling a slightly different version of that story. So as a client, you're much more of a storyteller, an internal salesperson, and then you mentioned about agencies being important. I can't do my job without agencies. I cannot do it. So when an agency does an amazing job for me, what they're doing is allowing me to succeed and me to look good within my business, meaning those cheeky chaps are getting hired again. The agency that delivers late, doesn't do a very good job, makes it really hard for me to persuade my CEO, really hard, and they probably won't get used again. So an agency is as important as they make themselves. If they do an amazing job for me, they will absolutely remain important and we'll work together again. If it's a clusterfuck, if it's that it's late, there's problems with the data, they only put their most junior person on writing the report because the director's schmoozing another client, then they probably won't work together again.
So how much,
No, please go ahead.
how much of that story is, like what's the ratio of agency work and then your story? How much, is it?
That's a good question. It should be 20% agency work, and they do such a good job that all of the rest of my job, 80%, is going and getting the business to make decisions. The reality is it's probably 50-50. Because, also as a client, we make bad decisions, right? We choose the cheaper agency rather than the more expensive one, and then halfway through the job, we're like, oh, fuck, yeah. Yeah, we realise why that is.
So that's the reason why that's the price, huh?
Yeah, or halfway through we start to go, oh God, this agency, it's our responsibility to choose which agency to work with. We can get that wrong. And that's not necessarily the agency's fault, that can be us misreading the proposal. And when it goes wrong, there's so much emphasis on us to fix it. It's unreal.
So I guess having the right agencies in your roster is really important. I imagine the challenge is you taking the role, and how do you go around adapting that roster over time? What is the thought process? What is the journey?
Yeah, it's really good. I always try and have a principle of for any brief that you send out, 2 agencies that can do it, and one that's a bit of a wild card, and you'll see what happens. That way you do give new agencies an opportunity, but you also don't forget the fact that your incumbent agencies have done good work for you in the past. I also firmly don't believe in wasting time when it comes to proposals and stuff. I'm ex-agency, I know how long it takes to write a really good proposal. I never send it to someone unless they've got a chance of winning it. That's the principle I work by. Some clients do, or procurement insists that you've got to send it out to 15 people, blah, 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 blah. I don't as a point of principle. I always make sure that the agencies, because I understand that any time you're working on a proposal, fundamentally is margin negative for an agency, because you ain't getting anything back until you win it. So if I send you a proposal just for the sake of it, just to tick a box, then I'm being really disrespectful of the agency, and I don't want to behave like that.
And you mentioned just earlier, in terms of that 50-50 relationship, do you give that sort of feedback to the agencies you work with in terms of, okay, you've done a good job, but this is how you could have done better?
360 feedback is really critical. So I think it's really unfair when an agency puts the effort in of writing what they think is a really good proposal, and they don't get chosen, and then the client blanks them. Don't explain why they haven't won it. Don't explain why they chose another supplier. Don't explain what they could do differently next time to win it. And I know it happens, right? I'm ex-agency, I understand it happens. But it's really heartbreaking, because if you're that person who probably has had to write that proposal in their spare time, because it's not like someone at an agency is sitting there waiting for work, they've got enough work, proposals on top of that. I think you've always got to give respectful feedback. And then as you go through a project, I don't think it's about waiting until the end. I think it's about immediately giving feedback, both positive and negative. Because I remember when I was younger, thinner, all of these things at an agency, when you got an email from a client saying, God, that was good work, thank you. I was like, I'm catnip.
Changes the week.
Versus if you don't find out anything and at the end the client sort of comes out with their iron fist and goes, that was a fucking mess. That's less helpful.
So how do you...
Or worse, when the client, and I've been in this situation, where you turn up for a debrief and you've got a room full of marketers and the client throws you under the bus and doesn't support the agency. Have you been there? You must have been there. Come on. I've been, when I was Ipsos, right at the beginning of my career, we were doing a load of testing for Carlsberg out in Denmark. So we flew across bright and early, red-eyed flight to Copenhagen. We got into the room and our direct client told us that, look, this is really awkward. I gave you the wrong brief. I gave you the wrong sample definition. So you're going to need to sort of stand up and try and rescue this debrief. And then about 5 minutes in, I was really trying my best. This woman, I won't mention her name, stands up and goes, yeah, I don't think we'll use them again. I'm really sorry for the mistake. I was like, oh, yes, thanks for that. Thanks, that's very kind. So experiences like that have taught me that, yeah, you always manage. Feedback is a gift, a former line manager of mine.
So who to choose in that situation? I'm really curious. Did they back you up in the future, said like that was their fault or not? No.
And obviously, because Ipsos wanted to win more work with Carlsberg, they didn't back the project team up. They just took it and gave a discount to Carlsberg, even though it was their mistake. But that's an example of what sometimes happens. Like the client gets the agency so firmly bent over a barrel that the agency sort of goes, yes, sir, no, sir, and doesn't push back because they're so afraid of losing the work, even if the work doesn't make them any money, even if the work is making the team miserable. Yeah. And I think this is an industry of broadly nice people. I don't want to feel that my projects are making people miserable. My jokes, my shirt choices, that's a different story, but my work, hopefully not.
How often agencies, for no reason, got guilty for something? You know, like a stakeholder. Yeah, you know, like a stakeholder doesn't like the research project, and it's maybe your mistake. But you just say like, no, that agency is really bad. We are going to fire them. We're not going to use them again. Sorry.
Sorry about those words. No. So I, as a principal, believe that when you commission an agency for that project, they become part of your extended team. So it's not I am commissioning an agency. I have a team of people, both my team and the agency. So therefore, when that agency... I have never allowed an agency to present a debrief that I've not been involved in. Because if I don't believe the story when I'm in the room, that looks really bad. It needs to be that the agency and I, but it's our story, it's our recommendation. And then when you do that, you know, if my marketing director or my CEO goes, I don't agree with that at all, agency X, then I can stand up and go, well, no, actually, let me tell you why you're wrong there. So it's all about like teamwork and partnership. And like if clients aren't reviewing decks and are letting you come in and present without ever having read it, what's the point of that client? They're just turnstiles at that point.
You've mentioned a number of things that seem like a really good thing that you do in terms of adding 2 trusted agencies and 1, and maybe a spin of the wheel. Also giving that feedback, but all of those aspects must take a lot of your time. So how do you navigate that time challenge?
I think as a client, you've got 2 ways of spending time. You can spend time at the end with your trousers down, embarrassed because everything has gone wrong, getting your arse spanked by your senior stakeholders. Or you can... Yeah, I know. I've been limping for weeks. Or you can spend time on the project with the agency, making sure it's perfect. You've got a choice of where you spend your time, getting it right first time or getting it right once you've already had a spanking. And I prefer that my stakeholders are delighted and that my agency get praise and credit versus being taken into the back room for that sort of treatment. Yeah, it makes me look good. When the agencies deliver a brilliant piece of work, it makes me look good. When the agency don't, then I look like an idiot because I'm the voice. When the agency goes back to their office or goes to the pub to commiserate, we might be referencing that piece of research for 2 years after that. And every time it won't be, God, do you remember when that agency came in? It'll be, I can't believe people did that. What a twat. And that's, you invest the time on doing brilliant research as a client. If you don't, then you spend your time trying to fix problems at the end.
What are your thoughts about the famous quote, "You don't get fired for hiring IBM"? Can that be translated to us? And did you find yourself on what are your thoughts? Do big names get it easier? And how can young, poor, new coming, agencies stand with those guys?
So look, the reality, very simply, is that most people know Kantar and most people know Ipsos, right? So when I go to my marketing director, my sales director with a report from Ipsos or Kantar, it's always going to be fine. It's never going to be a disaster. It's always going to be 7 out of 10, okay? And there are certain jobs where having that stamp, particularly actually if you work in Asian, Latin American, more developing markets, sometimes having this is a big global agency, you can trust us, really matters. There are other jobs where 7 out of 10 isn't enough. You need it to be 10 out of 10. And unless you happen to know really good people at those big agencies, they're unlikely to be 10 out of 10. So it's working out the jobs where safety and the warm embrace of a Kantar, Ipsos and 7 out of 10 is absolutely fine. And it's working out where you need it to be spectacular, and that's where new agencies can play a role. Or the other end, actually, so it's not just 10 out of 10. There are also some jobs where 3 out of 10 is enough, right? There are some jobs where you just need a few figures, you just need it quickly, you don't need to pay 30 grand. So as well as agencies having an opportunity to be absolutely brilliant 10 out of 10, there's also space for agencies that just get me what I need quickly, dirtily and cheaply. There's also space for that. So it's realising that all of these things have a role. They're not interchangeable, and just knowing the right time to use each.
I think to build on that question, out of interest, you mentioned in the RFP process, you do 2 trusted providers and 1 perhaps challenger. Surely in your mind as the key decision maker, you have the trusted 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, and perhaps an unknown. How do you make that judgment? Would a pitch response be sufficient for you to make a gut bet on that?
I think I'm a huge fan, I know not every client is, of calls about briefs and proposals. This weird, awkward email exchange where I send someone I've never met a brief and they send me a PowerPoint, 50-page PowerPoint back, and we've never really spoken, and then I'm supposed to make a decision on a 200 grand project based on that. You can tell very quickly, just by talking to someone, whether they are going to be the right agency or not, or at least whether they're in with a chance. I've got a very big, interesting project that I'm kicking off at the moment where there's 5 agencies in a pitch, because it's quite complex, unique brief. Hannah at the back is working on it, so I can't say too much about whether she's one of the good or bad ones yet, though I haven't thrown her out. That's looking encouraging for her. But we actually, after 2, not face-to-face, but 2 calls with agencies, decided, actually don't worry writing a proposal, because just by talking to you and hearing your capability and your specialism, we don't think you're right, because you get that impression. Like, all of research and insight has been able to read people, and my job is to be able to read agencies. So the agency that comes prepared, engaged, enthusiastic, they've done their homework, they bothered to go online and look at my brands and learn a little bit, you go, yeah, they're really worth a conversation. The ones that turn up and they haven't really read it and they've probably got a hangover from the night before, it's just like, no, you can tell quickly.
And does that scale across other clients? Would you say, oh, are you quite a unique guy in that space?
I'm quite a unique guy for a number of reasons, but not about how I work. Fucking cheeky fuckers out there. No. So I think good clients behave like that. I've worked in 4 client-side companies and good people work like that. But I've also at the same time never worked in the absolute biggest companies, Unilever and P&G and PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, where it is a little bit more, they do so much research that it is a bit more sausage factory and it is a little bit more, we produce the same things each. So I can't speak for clients like that because they have a very different world. I've always worked for medium-sized companies who most of the research is ad hoc, not completely, we're going to test 1,000 things this year in the same way as we did last year. So I think if you take the time to try and learn the client and build that relationship more, the client wants to look good and the client doesn't want to have to eat humble pie. So of course they'll want to work with you like that if you give them the chance.
Okay, Paul, so what would you say, like some really good tips for agencies to be better with their clients for immediately next week?
Immediately for next week.
Yes. Or Friday. Yeah.
I think there's a few pieces. I think number one is, and I've said it repeatedly, the client is not scary. They are not more intelligent than you. They are not more capable than you. They just do a different job. Talk to them. Don't treat them like they're your stepdad that you don't quite like, right? Treat them as equals. Talk to them, engage with them. Second is, a problem solved is a problem shared on a project, right? I've had no end of examples where agencies try and hide problems or don't tell me until the last possible moment. If you tell me when it goes wrong, I can help you fix it. Or more often than not say, well, do you know what? If we haven't managed to recruit exactly enough of this particular target group, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So, communication, confidence, have an opinion, right? Sometimes I think there's a fear of we don't want to give an opinion because what if it's wrong? Well, if you're not giving an opinion, what are we paying you for? Because we can read data, like if one number's bigger than another, we can read it, right? If there's a speech bubble saying, we really like this idea, yeah, we can fucking read that just as well as you. But pulling it all together into this is what your business should do, that is what clients love, because then, and it doesn't mean it's all going to be right, we can agree with some, disagree with some, and come up with those joint recommendations. Just getting that clients are individuals and we work in different ways, and there are some early birds, there are some not nut owls, what are they called, night owls. There's early birds, there's night owls. Some people want email, some people want Teams, some people want a daily update. Just ask, and then the client won't get frustrated. Just always your job is to add value to the client. So whatever you're doing, whether it's a report, whether it's an approach to try and win business, just have that mindset of what are we giving the client that's going to make them more able to do their job, because that's what we want. We want people to help us be good at what we do. That'd be 4 things top of mind.
It's a little bit more than 4, but yeah. I'm just trying that approach, not to be more, just to tell you when you are wrong. Okay, before we turn to the Q&A, do you have any last question?
Absolutely. I think just switching gears a little bit, given you worked client side for so long, what's your outlook for the future? Where do you think the industry is heading? How do you think AI is going to impact it? Is synthetic data playing an impact already?
So, about 10 years ago, the industry fucked itself by telling marketers that But actually, you don't need research agencies. You can do it all DIY on these platforms. It's so easy, right? And I know you guys are a platform. I'm not criticizing platforms as a role. But about 10 years ago, marketing directors kept hearing from Taluna and Zappy Store and all of those guys that you don't even need your research team. You can do the research yourself. And all the marketers hear is quicker and easier, right? Which means that there is a danger that research has been commoditized into, right, you know, I want this sausage, not that sausage from the factory. The second you commoditize research, it means you don't need people. You know, Zappy Store even actively sells their platform as, yeah, the marketers can do it directly, don't worry about the insight team. So that, about 10 years ago, created this weird belief that research takes too long and research is too expensive. Meaning now that everything is being compressed. Really good clients have been able to work out when there is a space for platform-enabled research and when you need good old-fashioned proper quality research. Lots of clients don't have that experience. Like if you've only worked for 3 or 4 years, you're fresh out of university, it's your second job, and your marketing director said, well, use this, it's cheaper. They don't know the difference. And that's really difficult. The second that industry becomes commoditized, it just gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And you know, there are platforms now like, I think, Viper, who claim to be able to test an innovation for $50. And that is how little research is worth. It's $50 fucking dollars. You know, Ipsos, when I was there, would have charged 15 grand for that project. And that's obviously too high. But, so commoditization of research is a big worry. I think you're seeing two directions. You're seeing, particularly after COVID, when everything had to go online, I think you're starting to see the industry realize that actually there's a role for really good, proper, qualitative, in particular research. Like if you want to understand how people act, asking them whilst they're sitting on their laptop and they're probably multitasking and they're not paying attention, isn't going to be, you need to be with them. So I think there are some people starting to get, well, actually, we shouldn't throw away focus groups or in-depth interviews or whatever it might be. They have a really good role. On the subject of AI, I often think that a researcher is like a builder, right? And a builder wears a tool belt. And on that tool belt, he or she has a hammer and a screwdriver, and I'm not very good at DIYs, that's as far as I get. And AI is another thing on that toolkit. What it shouldn't be trying to do is replace the hammer or the screwdriver or the chisel or whatever it might be. I've used AI a lot and I've used it for years. But what it doesn't do is replace human thinking. What it can do is fast track a lot of the more mundane elements of the role. AI, I remember as a research exec, if you wanted to learn about a category, you'd spend 3 days downloading Mintel reports, you'd be out on search engines trying to get everything you could. AI, you know, can now within 2 seconds give you enough to at least start with. And so, but what it can't do is that really important part of recommendations, strategic thinking. So it will grow and AI will replace mundane parts of the job, but provided people make sure they add value, then AI won't replace them, is the way I look at it. I'm not that worried at the moment about AI taking my job because I think I do things that AI can't do.
But you have implemented those processes, be it writing queries, using maybe synthetic data to pre-test some of the hypotheses.
Immense success, and I won't name the agency or things like that for the sake of this, but one of the big challenges we have as a company is we spend over $100 million globally on point of sale materials. So the stuff you see in the supermarkets, the stuff you see in the pubs, and it's really hard to ever research that because if you try and set up research in a supermarket, it takes months, it's complicated, you need store permissions, and it's expensive. And if you don't do it in the real place, and you just ask people about it online, all you get is whether people like a piece of point of sale or not if it grabs their attention, it's well branded, it cuts through, it is a clear call to action. So we have partnered with an AI agency that in real life have done something like 10,000 real life research on the point of sale, and have used that to build a predictive AI tool so that now you can take your point of sale, whether it's on trade or, on trade is like hotels and restaurants and cafes, off trade is retailers. And you can take that, you can put it in situ, and that machine within 2 minutes will tell you, will your asset stand out? Will people know it's well branded? Will they be able to understand the core message you're giving? Will they react positively emotionally to it? That has been, we tested 300 things in 2 minutes. We found out that 80% of that 100 million that we spent got less than a mediocre score on that database. Now that we could never have done with old-fashioned research, but that's an absolute game changer. Whether that means our ROI on that 100 million massively increases, or it means that we realise, well, we can spend much less with the same effect. That's the kind of change it can do. But I'll tell you for a fact, it took a fucking load of time of me and my team of actually analysing what it means, because we suddenly got 20 scores per piece of point of sale, 300 rows of things we tested, and 6,000 data points. There's still not an AI that can package that into a right, Suntory, this is what you need to do differently. That's still our job. But it took away the rubbish part, and it allowed us to get to the results and made a difference.
Amazing. On that note, we're going to turn to the Q&A. Hopefully we have some interesting questions from our lovely crowd today.
What's a typical insights project you would commission for an agency to an agency?
That question is genuinely as difficult as asking how long a piece of string is. At the moment, I've got everything from AI point of sale testing, VR display testing, some real life merchandising work we're doing in the States. We're doing demand space work to understand the sort of non-alcohol category. We are doing a massive piece of semiotic and cultural work about how we win in India. We're doing a huge amount to understand the success of our advertising in Brazil. That is another big difference when you move from agency to client. Agencies tend to be specialized in one area and be absolutely amazing at that area. My job is to be at least passable at all of it. So variety is one of the things that makes the job fun.
Yes.
As an agency, we just see our own work, and we very rarely get to look at the pitches, proposals, deliverables. Where do you see the starkest difference between what you get given by agencies?
That's a really good question. The starkest difference is in terms of whether or not they've had that upfront conversation. I tend to find if you've had a really good conversation with any agency, they will get you a good piece of work. It's the ones that don't that you see the difference. I mean, look, there are also like some quite big differences. If you do use one of the big boys, their proposals are more, they've taken my brand name off, it was Heinz before, or it might have been Unilever, and they've just taken it off. There is more cookie cutter from the big agencies. Like independent agencies have much more variety in their thinking stylistically. But yeah, the biggest difference in terms of the quality of output is how they engage with the client and work with them, to be honest.
And what about like output report level?
So I think it's really true that if you go to a big agency, you get a 7 out of 10 when it comes to the report. I think, so I was at Ipsos 20 years ago, eek, old man, and they were talking about how they made deliverables, slides more engaging then, and honestly, the fuckers, it's no better now than it was 20 years ago. It's a constant amazement to me that we live in a world where who reads 200 slide documents? Who sits and listens for 2 hours? There's amazing stats out there that the level of film watching is just going down the pan because that's too much attention being demanded for people. Watching a 5-minute YouTube video for many younger consumers is too much time. So there's the new scrolling, there's TikTok. We can't advertise on TikTok. I just embarrass myself on TikTok, so I'm not on it. But there's this weird thing where agencies haven't realised that clients have also gone through that, and trying to get someone to listen to an hour and a half debrief of 100 slides, and the eyes are glazing over. I love it if agencies were bold and said, no, we're going to do it via video. We're going to gamify it. We're going to deliver it in a way where none of you will ever forget it, versus here's our PowerPoint, but it's all right because we put a little animation on slide 4 just to engage it. Like the text bounces in like that or something.
Paul, so the point of that conversation before that agency wants to have with you is to learn as much as they can about your work, so that when they see that brief, so that they can connect the dots with the brief, and then they can tailor their own work they did before with those dots. Exactly. Right?
Exactly that. There's only so much you can put into a written brief. Yeah. Right? A lot of the magic comes from the conversation you have about the brief.
Okay, fair enough. Any more questions? Oh, okay. So I think you were the first, yeah? Okay, then we'll go to Lisa.
But Paul, first of all, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think it's amazing to hear and really insightful. My question is, what has been the most beneficial thing to you personally an agency has ever delivered to you?
Well, the funny answer to that is I ended up marrying someone from one of my agencies, so my wife. But that is an expectation of most agencies, not at this stage.
It was really up to those conversations.
The conversations were awesome. I'm being silly. The most amazing thing an agency has ever given me personally is when I first took my role in Africa. I'd only ever worked in the UK before, and I'd been the kind of home counties, Oxbridge educated, never really a foot in the real world type wanker. And this agency said, right, Paul, before you come and speak to this Nigerian director, who I'm going to be honest with you is going to destroy you, we need you to come and spend a couple of days, and we're going to take you on a tour of Lagos, and we're going to take you to the bars, and we're going to show you what the real life is like, because otherwise you don't have a clue. And I think it's shocking, obviously going all the way to Nigeria is quite an extreme example. When I used to work for Diageo, there was someone who used to work on Gordon's, wonderful gin brand, right, who once said to me, and she was the marketing manager, God, I'd never go where Gordon's is drunk. Those places are rubbish. Most clients have very little interaction with their own category in the kind of place where consumers go. So the most valuable thing an agency can do is get me off my arse, get my team off their arse, and get my marketers off their arse, and get them out to the field. Go and see the bars, go and see the places, because one visit to Lagos taught me more about it than a £100,000 usage and attitude study would have done.
Lisa.
Yeah, my question was a follow-up to you said about AI, that you had 20 by 300, the 6,000 data points, which you and your team still had to decipher. With that in mind, what do you think the toolkit of the future looks like for researchers and agencies? If AI can do all of that, what should we prioritise to be learning, upskilling, and being the best we can to combat that?
I think that's such a good question. That's a brilliant question. I think many researchers are trained to be obsessed with methodology and data, and the time of that is going to go because it's going to be replaced. What we need to reposition ourselves as consultants, we're an incredibly insecure industry, the market research industry. Advertising agencies walk into a client and the red carpet is laid down, right? Sometimes the creative sessions, the assets which are shown are fresh-ass bullshit. There's someone that they're completely off brief, they're dreadful, but a creative agency is treated with kid gloves and respect. Then the research agency comes in and they shuffle in and we don't want to have a cup of tea, we don't want to cause a bother. Don't worry about getting us a glass of water, we'll have one afterwards. We're a very nice and insecure industry. Like, if we want to survive, we need to move away from we're the guys that deliver research to we're the guys that use research to change your business. So analytical skills, consultancy skills, genuinely understanding how business works, Graduates, research agency aren't taught how a client's P&L work. They're not explained the innovation process, the advertising process. But on day one, they're testing ads, right? I did. And I look back now at some of the recommendations I made with absolutely fuck all credibility. Because no one had told me what it's like, what we're doing. So yeah, that would be it. Making us less about the front end of research and more about the actual, what the client's going to do.
Sora, we had a question as well.
It was addressed.
It was addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the best when that happens. Yeah, you're crossing them. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, it was a brilliant talk, Paul. We really enjoyed it, and thank you so much.